Listen to the Locker Room Pulse on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music for sports fans by sports fans.
Hello and welcome to the Locker Room Pulse. My name is Alfie.
My name's Freddie.
My name's Finley.
And today we have Match of the Day host and Sky Sports presenter Mark Chapman on with us. So let's get this episode started.
So obviously, Mark, this morning you started off your day with Capital. Obviously, noticed you're doing a lot of different broadcasts. How does it obviously feel preparing for all different ones?
Good spot for listening to Capital this morning, and I know that was on that. It was only a couple of minutes. I think the variety is good, to be honest. I really like the variety. I mean, the Capital thing was just a mate asking me if I just could come on for 90 seconds, so I didn't really have to do much preparation for that. I like the variety, and actually because of the variety and doing so many different things, whilst you have to prepare for each one, because you're constantly doing stuff and different stuff, a lot of the information is just going in constantly, really. I mean, I think that's one of the beauties of working in sport is that, you know, I watch a lot and listen to a lot and read a lot. So you're kind of immersed in it all the time. It's not like I don't have a passion for it. So because I love it and it's a hobby, it's sort of always in my wheelhouse, really.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing that it's your passion as well, and you can do it in everyday life. So,
oh my God, that's the if your job is also your hobby, that's kind of the dream, isn't it? Really, yeah. I mean, that's what we all hopefully aspire to.
Yeah, and just touching on that as well, I think the question I wanted to ask is, what really inspired you to get into broadcasting?
The radio when I was about 13, 14, really. And I mean, it sounds really weird, this, but sort of in the late 80s, the only way you consumed media was either TV or radio. There wasn't really, there were no such things as these things that I'm recording this on, and so on and so forth. And we moved house, and for whatever reason, the old house that we were in had a telly, like in the 80s, had a telly built into the kitchen breakfast bar, and we didn't take that with us to the new house. So the new house only had a radio in the kitchen, and I started listening to Radio 1 at breakfast and listening more to music radio in the car, and that's how it started. From that age of sort of 14, I wanted to work for Radio 1. That was my ambition. Then just it triggered me in some way. I'd go up into my room and use my record player and cassette deck or whatever and record pretend radio shows and stuff, and it all started from there.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, in terms of just general shows, how much preparation goes into it?
It sort of depends on the show, and it depends on the sport, really. I think, and it depends. It can even depend what the match is. So, preparing for an FA Cup first round TV game is going to be very different to preparing for a Saturday afternoon on 5 Live when you've got 70-odd games going on. And I think that's I couldn't give you a hard or fast rule, really, for what my average preparation is like. When I first did the Super Bowl sort of 15 years ago, I probably prepared for about 2 months for the first Super Bowl that I did, with all the research that I was doing, because it was completely different and new, and I wanted to not make a mess of it. So it can vary depending on what it is. And also the other big thing in all of this is, depends if you're doing something for the first time, depends how comfortable you are with doing something. If I look at Saturday afternoons on 5 Live or Monday Night Club, I've been doing for sort of 10, 15 years, really. So there's a comfort with that. There's a comfort with knowing kind of the rhythm of the show. There's a comfort with working with the same producers. Everything that I do, I've got amazing production teams who also provide you with information. My big thing with production teams is to say to them, look, if you find a real nugget of a stat or a fact, or you've read something and you think, my God, that's really interesting, I want that. I don't need you to write questions for me or scripts for me. It's all about everybody pooling their information to make it the best show we possibly can.
Yeah. And for you, getting into broadcasting, obviously you said from a young age, was it always sports broadcasting you were interested in, or was it just genuine?
No, it was that was music. I mean, that was music with Radio One, and when I volunteered at hospital radio and stuff, it was being a music presenter, and I knew that I just wanted to work in radio. That's what I knew. And then as I got a bit older, and when I was doing my degree, and my degree was in French and business, and then I realised that I wanted to do a postgrad in broadcast journalism. Then I sort of realised that whilst I still really enjoyed doing music radio, that if I was going to sort of have something else as a passion and as another option, it would be sport journalism. I didn't want to be a news journalist at all. I wanted to sort of focus on the sport. So when I did my postgrad in broadcast journalism in London, I specialised on the sport side of things there. And then I kind of, when I was at Radio One, eventually I balanced doing music and sport. I mean, it was a dream, really.
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to put you on the spot here. Gus Poyet, the moment live on air, we actually he was sacked from Brighton. Talk to me a bit about that.
Well, people assume that I told him he was sacked. He was. I think that the feeling was that it was coming. He knew it was coming, and during the first half of that, and that was a Confederations Cup. The Confederations Cup used to be the summer before a World Cup, being held in the country that was going to host the World Cup. It's kind of like a tester event, 8 teams. So a decent tournament, not the most, prestigious, but an important international tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And he was with us, and the game kicked off, and then he went off out of the studio into another room to take a couple of calls. And that whilst he was taking those calls, the statement sort of dropped that he had been sacked. So when he came back in, it was like, I'm guessing those calls were about, and he was like, yeah. I said, well, we're going to have to do this. We can't ignore it. So he knew, but I had to read the statement out to him. And there's a sort of misconception that he was sat there, a statement was released he didn't know about, and then I just read it to him and he found out he was sacked. So it all happened in that first half, but he did know that he had been sacked.
Oh, okay.
But it was me having to tell everybody else that.
Yeah. So was the rest of the show a bit awkward, or was it all right? Was he all right with that?
He was absolutely okay, as I say, because he knew that it was coming, and I think because he knew that it was coming, 9 times out of 10 in those situations, the person will probably pull out of the show because they know what's coming, or they may have a job offer coming or whatever. So I think just the fact that he decided to still do it showed how comfortable he was with knowing what was going to happen, but he was okay with it. So I think I can't really remember what happened in the second half. I think he may have gone off and done a couple more phone calls. He was he did a few bits for us around that time, so it wasn't. We had a bit of a relationship as well, so it was okay. It didn't, from recollection, it didn't feel very awkward.
Okay. Yeah, and I think obviously that stands out as so far in your broadcasting career. Can you tell us what's the most memorable moment for you? What's the best moment in your career so far?
Oh my God. Some of the Super Bowls that I've done have been absolutely phenomenal. I was at a Super Bowl where Tom Brady came from 28-3 down with the New England Patriots to beat the Atlanta Falcons in the fourth quarter. I think we were in Houston for that. The Super Bowl is just amazing to present because it is a unique event as a UK broadcaster, because you've got to navigate all the commercial breaks that the Americans take whilst filling that and still covering the game. And so there's a real challenge to that, but that was an astonishing sporting event as well. Quite a lot of the ones that really stand out involved the golf. McIlroy winning the Masters.
Yeah.
The last couple of Ryder Cups have been off the scale, really. I was in Bethpage 6-8 weeks ago, something like that. So I always find that for me the ones that stick in my mind are a combination of both an astonishing sports story, but also a show or a broadcast or a week that is a challenge, and the whole team nail that challenge, not me, like the production team and the engineers and everybody. So that's why those ones that I've picked out stand out.
Yeah. Few.
Question? Yeah, so obviously we've just spoken about some of the other sports you do. I've sort of worked out you're a big fan of football and American football. So sort of including them two, what sport is probably your most favourable to present and obviously watch as well?
I love doing the rugby league. So the rugby league is great. The people I work with on the rugby league are great. Sport is really, I really like the sport to watch, but the people in it are really accessible. They want to sell the sport. You know, they will do everything they can to help your broadcast of that sport. So rugby league is up there. And then the golf is the other one. I mean, I like golf. I really like golf, but the challenge of presenting golf on the radio and the physical challenge, because when you do an Open or a Ryder Cup, it's like 10 hours on your feet and carrying your kit, which is quite heavy, often in interesting weather conditions, either hot or cold. And trying to make the golf interesting for people who like golf, but people who are just listening to the radio anyhow and aren't massive golf fans. So the golf and the rugby league are the other two that really I love doing. And then when the big events come around, when the Olympics come around, there's the challenge in presenting the Olympics as well, which is great.
Yeah.
In terms of sport, who would you say the nicest person in sport you've interviewed?
Oh God, the nicest. To be honest, I've never really had that many problems with anybody, really. I mean, you know, most people tend to be, as long as you're respectful with the questions and treat them with respect. Most people tend to be nice. I mean, one of the nicest has always been Beckham, right from, and I've got like now a sort of 20 year plus relationship with interviewing him over many years. It's been interesting to see how he has grown and developed in that time as well. But he's always unfailingly polite to everybody who is around any interview or any photo shoot. So, you know, he would be right up there, I would suggest.
Yeah. And for me, I think also on personal experiences working with other people, you can get surprise sort of personalities. See, like, for an example, Roy Keane, maybe he's like a hard man on the pitch, but off the pitch, he's a completely different person. Is there any surprise personalities that you've looked at someone and thought they're completely different to how I thought they would be?
Well, Roy is a good example. Roy is one of the nicest men you could wish to meet, and he's polite to everybody, and he's really, really funny. He's got a really dry sense of humour. And look, he doesn't suffer fools gladly, but he's a really nice bloke. So I'm not sure if anybody's massively surprised me over the years. I mean, people tend to be as you find them and see them, and I think in this industry as well, if you are very similar to what your on-screen personality is like, I think you can kind of get found out quite quickly, really.
Yeah.
If you could present one sporting event that you maybe haven't presented yet, what would it be?
Oh my word, that's an interesting one. Trying to think.
Or what's your
The thing
favourite
is,
event?
in so many sports, I've kind of been involved with it and done it. Really, I mean, I would like to. I think I would, and it's particularly appropriate as it's going on at the moment. I've never presented an Ashes series down under. And I like the idea of being down under for a whole Ashes series and presenting that. So I would probably go for that.
Yeah. Any questions from you?
Now move on to you.
I think moving on to football now, you're obviously a big Manchester United fan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with Ruben Amorim still being the manager?
Yeah, I do. I interviewed him last year, and he was great to interview. Really, really great to interview, and he's very honest. You know, we're only a year in. I think there are so many other issues at that football club when it comes to ownership that I don't just think you can look at. I don't think you can just look at the head coach. I do think it will take time. Do I agree with everything that he does? No, or has done. Do I think maybe there ought to be a bit more flexibility? Yes. But then I also think you have to look at you also have to look at what you would do if he wasn't there.
Mm.
And I'm not sure what that would be at the moment, if I'm brutally honest. Without having an in-depth knowledge of every single sort of manager in the world, a sort of broader view is I don't think there's a lot out there at the moment. And I actually think a lot of clubs will probably be just biding their time to see how the World Cup goes and see who becomes available after the World Cup, depending on what teams, various successors are. I mean, you could look at a summer and see, Nagelsmann. I'm not saying any of these are Manchester United manager. I'm just saying the general football landscape because I want to persist with Amorim. But you go to the summer, and after a World Cup, you could have Nagelsmann available, Deschamps available, Pochettino available, Ancelotti available, Roberto Martinez available. You look at managers who are going to be out of contract in the Premier League. Oliver Glasner's the prime example at the moment. Andoni Iraola's out of contract. So I think the summer landscape will be a really shifting one. Again, I'm not saying I want any of them to be Manchester United manager, but for the majority of clubs, I can't see what the benefit will be in changing a manager at the moment when the options are likely to become a lot clearer when you get to the summer.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what would you say the realistic aim for Man United and Amorim is this season then?
I would, firstly, to not lose at home again to 10 men when your opposition have had someone sent off for fighting amongst themselves. That will be one lofty ambition. I think ideally you want them to qualify for European football.
Sure.
You want and that has to be then seen as a sign of progress.
Mm.
I think that has to be it, and possibly have a good run in the FA Cup.
Mm. Moving on to the FA Cup, how magical is it to present the FA Cup draws and just in general the FA Cup?
The FA Cup draws. Magical's one word. Nerve-wracking is another. The early rounds, when you do the first and the second round, and you've got an audience, and you're at a lower league club, non-league club. The atmospheres are amazing, but there are a lot of balls to get through, and there's a lot going on. And so I do breathe a sigh of relief when in the past we've got to the end of a first round draw, and you sort of can see the bowl, and you think, we've got 2 ties left, and there are 4 balls in there, so that's all right. It's all gone to plan. That's fine. The third round draw is iconic, and again is nerve wracking because you just don't want anything to go wrong. But then, I really enjoyed doing them. It's and there's a challenge to them, and being across, properly across the numbers that are picked out and your little facts and just keeping everything running. They are challenging things to do, but they are great to do. And I do like doing the FA Cup. Those early rounds, and I haven't been able to do them this year for diary reasons, really. But you go to a non-league club and they've got a League One club, and the place is buzzing, and it's fun, and that's kind of what you want it to be.
Yeah, and over the years, obviously some great cup upsets have happened. Can you think of any memorable ones you've watched live?
I mean, Wigan beating Manchester City in that final. That was some going. That really was a shock. I mean, I'm not picking Manchester City losing here, but the last year's FA Cup final was an amazing cup final with Palace winning that. That was such a good cup final and a great story as well. I mean, I've done some sort of. There was a year where Sutton had a really good run. I think they may have beaten Leeds and gone quite close against Arsenal. So that was a good one to do. When you're there and you get one of those, I think Tamworth beat Huddersfield last year, and I did that one. So it's great because it just lifts a whole community for an evening.
Exactly, and I think a smaller club like that as well. There's definitely, when you get a cup run, there's more of a buzz around the community. As
more
you
of
say.
A buzz, and it can alter a club's fortunes for the next 2 or 3 years.
Exactly,
a cup run like that with the money and the finances. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Would you say the FA Cup draw is probably the hardest preparation? Obviously, like the lower teams, look at the preparation for them.
The first round FA Cup draw is one that properly gives me butterflies in a right, because you'll have 8 people to interview before you even do the draw. And then you've got the draw, and there are certain times that you've got to hit with it as well. Technically, it is one of the harder. Yeah, I'm not saying this job is rocket science by any means, but technically it is probably one of the harder ones to do when you take into, you've got to hit a certain time, because it's not just BBC taking that FA Cup draw, around the world is taking it. So you've got to hit a certain time off the back of your interviews. The draw's got to be done in a certain time. You've also got to make sure all the balls are in. You've got to make sure your pundits are okay. If they haven't done one before, they're going to be a bit nervous. There's quite a lot that goes into that. So yeah, that is one that requires a fair bit of preparation.
Yeah, and going into sports broadcasting, moving on to that now. When you were younger, did you know a lot about other sports, or was that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, I always watched a lot of sport and enjoyed a lot of sport and played a fair bit of sport, and I've always read a lot and listened to a lot. I did that with my dad as well. So yeah, it's always been there. Yeah, I think you've got to. It's quite hard, I think, in sport and not have loved sport and enjoyed sport. I think I can't think of anybody that I know who has sort of fallen into working in sport without having a love of it, or a team, or a sport in the past. I think that would be very difficult.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
What advice would you give to young people like wanting to be a presenter or something in the industry when they're older?
I would say don't rule anything in or out. Keep your options open. Don't turn anything down because you think it's not right. You never know where an opportunity may lead, or what skills you could pick up from doing something that you might not necessarily want to have a 30-year career in, but you may pick up a couple of skills that take you, that help you along the way in your chosen path. Keep your options as wide as possible. Don't, if you go on to further education, don't think that it's all about, if you were going to go to college or do a diploma or whatever it may be, you don't always have to focus on sport or media or journalism. There's plenty of time to do that. I look at quite a lot of interviewers at the moment, and one of the reasons they're getting a lot of jobs is they're really good linguists. They know a lot of different languages, and that really helps if you're doing post-match interviews in the Champions League, because you can translate for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's an example of, keep your options open. And then as you start to work in it and do those first presenting gigs, just focus on being professional, focus on getting the nuts and bolts of the job correct. Don't worry too much about all your personality coming in. I say to a lot of reporters when we first start out on a Saturday afternoon, just keep it very simple, details, scores, and over time you can build your character up, right? But if you, so many people in management in this industry will say to presenters, "Oh, you just got to be yourself. Got to be yourself," and it's really difficult to be yourself in this industry because there's a lot that goes into it. It takes time to understand who you are as a presenter and what the audience wants and what the audience likes. And it takes time to settle into jobs. So the example that I can give is I've been doing Sky maybe for 4 or 5 years, but my first year at Sky, I kept it really simple, nothing like how I was presenting the radio or Match of the Day, because it was a different company and it may have been a different audience, and you don't want to go into things assuming people know you, the character. You've got to build that up, I think, over years.
Yeah, and over the last decade or so, how has the dynamic really changed in not just sports broadcasting, but broadcasting in general?
Oh, well, there are so many different options. There are so many different outlets, which is great if you're starting out. There are so many different things that you can try and look at and actually set up yourself if you want to kind of start yourself out. I think it's also become a lot more informed. We have a lot more data. We have a lot more stats. Pundits, they don't fall into punditry anymore. They sort of, work hard when coming to the end of playing careers to then go into being a pundit. I think I think a lot more detail, a lot more information, a lot more variety, a lot more scope. I think it has really changed in the last decade.
Yeah.
Just quickly, obviously, you will probably see football through a different pair of eyes to us three. So, just quickly, I'm curious, who do you think is going to win the league this season?
I said at the start of the season, I thought before a ball had been kicked, I thought Arsenal would win the league, and I don't see any reason to change that. They've got, at least two players for every position. They're very well run off the field. I think the relationship between Arsenal and the LA Rams is really interesting. Both owned by the Kroenke family. And I think they're helping each other when you look at what the Rams are doing in the NFL as well. So I don't see any reason to change from my prediction of Arsenal at the start of the season.
I'm off to a game tonight, actually, at the Emirates tonight.
Yeah.
What do you think the score's going to be?
3-0 Brentford. I don't know. It's the kind of game, and I'm not necessarily saying Brentford, but it's the kind of game that Arsenal every now and then have a wobble with historically. I don't see that tonight. I don't see it being like 4-0, 5-0. I'll go 2-0 Arsenal.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think over the years as well, since Arsenal have sort of been in that title race, I think this season especially, it's been more impressive that Arsenal can just turn over teams, especially like Bayern Munich, the big teams in Europe, instead of having those bogey teams, you like to call them, like Brentford or a slip up. Yeah. I think that's probably that while they win the league this season.
Yeah, I would agree.
Going back to punditry, who would you say your favourite pundit to work with is?
Oh, goodness. I mean, it depends what you want, really. I am so impressed by how Jamie Carragher works and how he builds his analysis when I work with Jamie on Sky. Really, really good. The other Jamie on Sky, I'm always really impressed with in Redknapp because he has an amazing ability to bring other pundits into the conversation. He's an incredibly generous pundit, so it allows you to develop more of a discussion, really, and conversation. I'm really Danny Murphy is tactically just a brilliant pundit to work with. Joe Hart makes you think differently about everything. He doesn't follow the crowd. He has a different opinion, different thoughts on things, not just goalkeepers, just in general. And he also asks questions back at you, so that challenges you. Troy Deeney has been a real up and coming pundit when it comes to his coaching analysis, and I think that surprises a lot of people. People that I've worked with for many years, Sutton, Micah Richards, Alan Shearer, I can just have a laugh with. I know that I can just go anywhere with it, and it will be hopefully good radio or good television.
Yeah.
But then in other sports, OC and Jason when I did the NFL, Michael Vaughan when I do the cricket, John Wilkin, Jamie Peacock, Sam Burgess when I do rugby league. I mean, there are a lot of good, intelligent. Laura Kenny when I did the Olympics was an amazing pundit on the cycling. Amazing pundit. I loved working with Laura. People who give you insight but make it fun and are relaxed, and I think virtually everybody I've said there has those characteristics.
And that's what it's all about, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about educating. It's about telling us all something that we don't necessarily know, insight into their playing career. But at the end of the day, look, whilst it is serious and people it is people's careers and so on and so forth, it's also meant to be fun and entertaining.
Yeah. I think for us three as well, I think what we're most interested in is going into that sort of field, sports journalism, broadcasting. Is there any sort of what makes the best broadcaster really? What's the best sort of pundit? How do you shape the best sort of pundit?
I always say to my pundits, I want it to be a conversation. I don't want it to feel like it's like a tennis match and me asking a question, you giving an answer, me asking a question, you giving an answer. I want it to be a conversation. I don't think any detail, no matter how small, from your career, don't think that it's not necessarily interesting. It's up to us to decide what the interesting things are and to get those out of you. And whatever happens, I'll make sure that you're all right by the end of it. I'll make sure that you won't get sued and so on and so forth. So it's to make them feel comfortable that they're going to be looked after.
Yeah.
And I am there to get the best out of them.
Yeah.
So obviously, cheers for coming on, Mark. Obviously, means a lot for you to come on, speak to us, sort of give us on what you do, really.
No problem. I hope it all goes well for you.
Yes, thank you. Good luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and see you next time.